Hi everyone, my name is Victoria and today we will talk about a very exciting topic. It's serverless threat modeling. In today's session we will learn three key things. First of all, what is threat modeling and why it's so important for serverless? Secondly, how it can help to boost security awareness in your team. And last but not least, how to run a good threat modeling session. So let's get started. This picture is a bit blurry, but I'm super proud of that because I took it myself last year at re:Invent. During this exact moment, Dr. Werner Vogels shared that security should be built into the core of the products that we ship and not just being something sprinkled afterwards. You're probably aware of shared responsibility model, and while AWS is still responsible of security of the cloud, we as a customers, we are responsible for security of our applications. And if you think of that, imagine you've built a serverless application. It scales fast, there is no service to manage, and everything works nicely. But here is the catch. Modern hackers, they don't need servers to hack. They can work with misconfigured triggers, over-permissioned roles, or, for example, vulnerable third-party dependencies to make a damage to a system. But good news is that this is where serverless threat modeling comes into play, because by thinking proactively as a hacker, you can address possible vulnerabilities. And threat modeling is definitely not just another obstacle in order to go live with your product. It's actually a very powerful tool that can help you to build secure applications. So, knowing all of these possible threats, you can consider threat modeling as a map of security risks. Threat modeling is ideally should be performed very, very early in a software development lifecycle, such as, for example, during solution design phase. And it's definitely not something that should be performed just once and never again. Threat model of your system should grow alongside with your system. And this is the exciting part. This is where Stride comes into play. So please raise a hand if you ever heard about Stride. Yay, I have some hands, so we are familiar with that. So it's basically types of threats you can think about when you design your application. So let's get started one by one. So first one is spoofed identity. Who can tell you more about spoofed identity than Kat? So it's about pretending to be someone or something other than yourself. And it can happen due to multiple reasons, such as lack of authentication or maybe reliance on single-factor authentication. The next one is tampering with input. It's modifying data on disk, memory, somewhere else, and it can happen due to tampering with cookies, or maybe a file upload feature fails to block malware. Next one is repudiation. It's about claiming that you didn't do something or weren't responsible for that, and it can happen due to lack of awareness or audit and access policies. Next one is information disclosure, and it's someone obtaining information that they're not supposed to have. It can happen due to poor secrets handling or leakage of essential system information. Denial of service. It's exhaustion of resources needed to provide service. Maybe you didn't think about rate limiting, or maybe your system wasn't designed to handle this load in the first place. And last but not least, it's elevation of privilege. It's allowing someone to do something that they're not supposed to do. It can happen due to various reasons, such as, for example, SQL injection, bypassing authentication, and other ones. So now when we know this, you might think, all right, I'm almost convinced, but how do I run a good threat modeling session? So let's get started and let's answer the first question. Who should be invited to threat modeling session? I usually advise to invite both people who code and who doesn't, because it's quite important to have a shared understanding of possible threats. So, a story time. Yesterday, on my way to Manchester from London, I was on a train and I heard a call. Someone took a work call without headphones, and for 2 hours, I was listening to things I'm not supposed to know at all. So please invite people who don't code as well, because they need to be aware of possible threats. And secondly, one of the biggest challenges you might face as a facilitator is for example, you gathered all the engineers, you did threat modeling, you identify threats, and now you need to go to your PM and explain what is that, why it's supposed to happen, and why it should be prioritized over the whole backlog of user-facing, revenue-bringing features. So this is why everyone should be involved. And next possible question is how to choose the right scope. So I would advise to start very small. So think about this single question: what would bring the most value right now? And you can start with as simple as just your current features in development. You can also choose some security-sensitive features such as authorization flow or payments. And if you still would like to have a look at the system as a whole, you can look for security tech debt acquired during the years. So, how long the session should be? Such a drastic difference with numbers. So if you're just starting with threat modeling session, I would really advise to do that for 90 minutes, because you really, as a facilitator, need to make sure that your team understands what is threat modeling, why it's important, what is tried, how to apply that. But the good news is that since you're doing that more oftenly, it can be as little as 10-15 minutes, and it's totally fine. So in order to create a shared understanding of the system you're going to do threat modeling to, you can bring a very low fidelity diagram. This diagram is simple. There are no cloud services at all. But what this thing should show is the main components, the users of the system, including external users, internal, such as admins and any possible consumers, network boundaries, whether it's public internet, whether it's VPC, etc., etc. Simple data flow, and last but not least, any assets such as files or credentials. So if you bring something like that, you can already work with that. And remember, we are very early in our software development lifecycle. So this is where you're gathering the whole team, and the most exciting part starts. It's evil brainstorming time. You're taking some time, and you're taking stride, and you're thinking proactively about any possible threats. And in our imaginary team, they were quite concerned about lack of any considerations about rate limiting. So they were like, okay, denial of service is real. Also, they were quite concerned about attackers possibly overwhelming a security scanner, because if they upload too many files, it can possibly stop responding, and yeah, it could be damage. Also, admins can secretly change scanning results, and if we don't have any audit logging in place, we can't really know about that. And last but not least, we will handle 3 types of files: scanned, unscanned, and quarantined. So how should we really organize that? Should it be the same bucket? Should it not? Actually, I don't know, so let's get started with that. When you finished your evil brainstorming time, you can take just node after node and have a look and assign that into one of the 4 categories, depending on their impact and likelihood. But what's more important is having a parking lot. As a team of engineers, and not only engineers, you can't possibly know everything, and this is very important to start a conversation with your security team very early. And in our case, we're actually going to consult about how to treat different types of files in the system. So I would like to do a very simple call for action. You really need to make threat modeling fun and enjoyable. So start very small. First of all, introduce the idea of threat modeling to your team. Secondly, do threat modeling using Stride for one security-sensitive feature. And last but not least, identify as little as 1 possible threat. Add it to your backlog and follow up to make sure it's being prioritized. So in today's session, we learned 3 key things: what is threat modeling and why it's so important for serverless. We also learned how it can boost security awareness in your team. And last but not least, how to get started with good threat modeling session. So hopefully after this talk, you love threat modeling as much as I do. I'm going to be around, so let me know if you have any question. And this is QR code to my LinkedIn profile, so let's get in touch. Thank you.